And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, how are you today? I hope you're doing well, taking a little bit of time for yourself. Maybe you're on some errands, maybe you're listening to the program, maybe you're watching the program. Either which way, I want to welcome you to today's program. Today, we're going to be kind of going to some questions that have been posted to our website, johnsonwim.com. If you've never been there, I encourage you to go to the website. There's a wealth of information to be able to help you be better prepared for retirement. But it's also the place that you can go and submit your questions. You can submit your concerns, maybe just some ideas that you have for the radio show or for the podcast. And I always look forward to those because that helps me as an advisor be able to kind of better identify with what your concerns are. This show is for you, and this show is here to try to encourage and support you in getting the retirement that you deserve, the retirement that all of us want, the retirement in which we have more than enough income. We have more income than we need. That sounds like a pretty good retirement to me, and I'm certain it does to you as well. Now, one of the questions that was submitted just recently was from Sam, and I got to tell you, Sam, if you're watching or you're listening, I really want to say thank you because, man, this was a doozy. This is a challenge, and I'm going to try my very best to answer this in a way that makes sense. I'm not here to defend. I'm not here to try to kind of argue or weasel around it. I want to deal with it head on because I think it is such a good, legitimate question. Now, here's Sam's question. And the question is, Matthew, my financial advisor, only talks about two different stages. He says that I have the accumulation stage, which is where I'm accumulating until I get to retirement. And then I simply have the distribution stage. Now, Sam's quandary is that he is a longtime listener of this radio show, and he knows from listening to this radio show and watching my podcast that I talk about three different stages within retirement. We discuss the go-go years, we discuss the slow-go years, and then we discuss the no-go years. Now, here's his real question. His question, and he wants to know, number one, what is the difference between the three? And then here's the big one. Here's the big hairy elephant that we have to discuss. He says, why is it so bad to spend your principal in the go-go years? Can't I just make up for that when I'm in my slow-go or my no-go years? And I think that that's a pretty legitimate question. Now, there is a lot of various different facets to this, and we want to be able to touch on all of these. So this is one of those programs that we're probably going to dedicate almost the entirety of this show to answering this question and just kind of giving you some points of consideration, things for you to think about, because every single person that listens to the show, you're in a different stage. You have a different set of circumstances, a different background. Some of you have made more, some of you have made less, some of you have had some real successes and you've hit some home runs. Some of you, well, you feel like all you've caught is just foul balls the entire time. So we're going to be trying to make certain that this is covering a variety of circumstances. Now, before we get into answering Sam's question, I also want to encourage you, if you like this kind of content, if this is something that stimulates the left and the right side of your brain, and you want to subscribe, I encourage you go to our YouTube channel, the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show, and I want you to hit that subscribe button. Give us the thumbs up. Share this with your friends. All of the comments and the suggestions that I get on a monthly basis are really what keeps this show going and keeps it fresh and keeps it relevant to what's going on. So let's get into this question. Number one, what are the three stages? Well, I've already kind of let the cat out of the bag. There is three stages, but you know what? I'm actually not going to discuss the three stages first. The first stage that I think is so very vital that so many people miss is what is referred to as the transition stage. This is the stage in which Maybe you're 6 months to maybe as much as 2 years away from retirement. You know that it's coming. You know that it's going to come by quick. And you're trying to figure out, okay, what parts of this puzzle do I need to get in place before I can actually feel really confident to be able to retire? Now, for many of you, this is kind of your information gathering stage. Remember, when you were 30, when you were 40, you really weren't concerned about Social Security. It felt so far into the future, you really didn't think twice about it. But now that you know that you're about to retire, now all of a sudden Social Security is becoming more relevant. You're starting to think about, how you're going to be able to collect that Social Security. Is this a Social Security that you should turn on, or should you hold off? Well, when we think about Social Security, the reason it's so important to us is because it's kind of one of the foundations to our house. This is something that we want to make certain as a lifetime income that's going to last the rest of our life, that we make the right choice, we turn it on at the right time. And if we're trying to coordinate benefits with a spouse, we want to be able to go in and sit down with an advisor or someone who specializes in Social Security and be able to identify, simply put, what the very best option is for turning on Social Security. Now, why is that important? Why do I put, as a fiduciary who specializes in income planning for retirements, why do I put such an emphasis on having sophisticated software and doing workshops and webinars and all of this pre-planning work into Social Security? Here's why. Because the difference between the single best option for Social Security and the second best option for Social Security could mean as much as $100,000 to $150,000 of income to you. And when you think about it, that's not pocket change in today's world. That is income that you get to keep. That's income you get to spend. That's income that potentially, if you predecease a spouse, that spouse is going to be able to continue to receive if you're the breadwinner or the bigger earner within the household. Now, Social Security, don't just stop there. You're also starting to look at your portfolio. You're starting to look at the risk that you're maintaining within the types of investments that you're looking to invest in. Not only today, but when you get into the distribution stage of your life, you're looking and trying to educate yourself about creating income. How do you create income sustainably? How do you create that income reliably? You're starting to become more engaged with how much are you paying for fees? Because guess what? Fees are dollars that you don't ever get to keep. Those are dollars, and once they're gone, they're gone. And you're starting to pay more attention to taxes. Not that taxes have never been an important thing to you, but you know what? When we get into retirement, we want to be as efficient when it comes to taxes as we possibly can be. So all of these things are kind of falling into this whole transition into retirement. That's really the first stage. Now, let's say that you've bitten the bullet, right? You've now given your resignation. You're now retired, right? You no longer have to wake up at 5:30 a.m. You don't have to go to the factory or the office. You don't have to do the deliveries anymore. You are now fully retired. Congratulations. But where are you? What stage are you in? You are in the first stage in retirement. That's the go-go stage. Now, why do I call it the go-go stage? Simply put, I'm calling it the go-go stage because this is the stage in which, soon after retirement, you still have energy. Okay, now you may not have energy. You may have to nest a while to be able to kind of recover and recoup and that sort of thing. Maybe go on a long vacation with a little bit of sunshine, as I've discussed before, to kind of get normalized into this stage of life that is now the retirement life. But you're going to have energy. You're going to have the desire to go. You're going to hopefully have the income to go. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to go. Another thing to kind of prove this philosophically is kind of asking, what's the one thing that you're going to have more of than anything else when you retire? And there's only one answer to that question, and that's time. You're going to have more time on your hands than anything else. And guess what human beings find to do with that time? they find things to do with that time, right? So many of us today we are so busy. And yet it's amazing when my clients retire, they will come in and they'll give me these little quips, these little comments like, man, now that I'm retired, I don't know how I ever found time to work. This is the reason why we go. This is the reason why we do. This is the reason why we have experiences and we go places and we travel. We spend time with friends and family. This is the go-go years. Now, those go-go years for the average person is going to last until about your mid to late 70s. And at that point, what is happening? Well, you're starting to graduate now into what I call the slow-go years. And that's not, to me, an insult. That's just a fact of life, pal. When you get into your mid to late 70s, you're still going to be going. There's no question about that. There's no doubt. But guess what you're going to be doing? You're not going to be going as long. You're not going to be going as far. You're not going to be going as often. Those are the slow-go years. And then, of course, what's the third stage? The third stage that I talk about all the time is the no-go stage. This is the stage of life in which many of the baby boomers today, their parents are at if they're still alive. They're in those 80s, and they're in a position where even if they could go, they simply won't go. I know my mom, when she was in her 80s, that's the way that it worked. It didn't matter if I had a team of mules, I couldn't drag her out of the house. She just simply did not want to go. And so what is happening financially speaking when you're in those stages? Well, obviously, the first stage, you're going to be spending the most amount of money. The second stage, you can imagine that the amount of spending is going to decrease a little bit, right? It's going to go down because you're not going as often, you're not going as far, you're not staying as long. And then you get to the no-go, you're not spending any money at all, or you're spending very little money. Now, back to this question that Sam had, Matthew, what's the stages and what do they mean? But then more importantly, is it really that bad to spend my principal in the go-go stage? Well, we're coming up to the first break. Sit tight because I'm going to come back and we're going to start addressing that. And I want to just maybe stimulate your mind to be thinking about the what ifs, because if we're not acknowledging the risks, then all of a sudden we are almost predisposed to make the mistakes and realize those risks in our life. And we want to be able to avoid those speed traps, those pitfalls. We want to be able to avoid making the mistakes that so many other people make in retirement. We want to be able to avoid that so we can have the retirement of our dreams. Sit tight. We will be right back. And welcome back to the second half of the Capitalize Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. If you're just joining us, welcome to the program. Today we're discussing a pretty in-depth question that has a lot of ramifications and a lot of application to every single person in America who is retired. And this is a question that was submitted to our website, johnsonwim.com. If you've never been to the website, I encourage you to go. There's just a multiplicity of different resources there that are available for you to learn. There's white papers, there's past radio shows, there's YouTube videos, every viable resource that you can think of to help you become more educated and more prepared for the distribution stage of our life. Now, this question was submitted by Sam, and Sam's question was kind of two-part. Number one, my advisor is always discussing that there's only two stages, the accumulation stage, and then there's the distribution stage. You talk about three, the go-go years, the slow-go years, and then the no-go years. What's really the difference? But then he gets down to the real nitty-gritty. Sam's question is, why is it so bad to spend my principal in the go-go years? Am I not going to be able to recover that in the slow-go years or the no-go years? And you know what? That's a legitimate question. Now, to answer that question, we have to realize that every single one of us has a different set of circumstances. We've all had different careers. We've made different kinds of money. Some of us are good savers. Some of us are not good savers. I don't know what category you fall into, Sam, and I'm not really sure what any of the rest of my listeners are going to fall into as far as, what their life has been affected by. But I think that there's several considerations that we have to think about. And the first one is this. If you're going to be spending principal, is that an okay thing? Well, I think that the first question to ask is, are you going to be producing legitimately within your own portfolio any interest and dividends? Now, why is that so important? Well, let me just kind of give this to you. Let's say that we talk on this radio show and on my YouTube videos about a safe withdrawal rate. And I have maintained this for a very long time. Mathematically, there are so many resources out there that would indicate to us from old textbooks that a 4% withdrawal rate is a safe withdrawal rate. And I would agree with that. Now, when you think about what Wall Street has taught us about the market and how the market has appreciated over the course of time, and they always give us this idea that on average, the stock market has returned 10%, between 8 to 10% on average. A 4% withdrawal rate sounds like child's play, right? Sounds totally feasible. But that's until we understand the key word that they're giving us, and that's the word average. Because what is an average? An average is the median between highs and lows. We know that there are periods of time in which the market is not returning. In fact, it's contracting, it's declining, it's going down, it's losing. And if you're in a position where, let's say that you determined, because of what you had worked hard to save and what you need as far as income, that's going to represent, say, 10% of your portfolio. And you're sitting in, say, a normal growth portfolio that's only producing, say, 1.5% in dividends. Well, then my question to you is, where does the other 8.5% come from? And the answer is simple. It's got to come from your principal. If you're not producing much in the way of interest and dividends, then it has no other place to come from. If you need the money and you pick up the phone, you call Vanguard, you call Fidelity, you call, whoever your custodian is, and you say, hey, send me X. Well, they're not going to have much of a choice, and you're not going to have much of a buffer. So the reality is that when we think about total return, remember the equation, total return equals income plus growth. If we really want a well-balanced portfolio, if we really want the best shot at being able to maintain and preserve our principal, we cannot afford to forget the I. We can't afford to forget the income. And I would suggest that if we are taking even a 4% withdrawal rate, we have to be making sure that our portfolio in the distribution stage of our life, maybe not in the accumulation stage, but the distribution stage of our life, is producing no less than 5% in dividends. Now, does that mean you have to give up growth? And the answer is no. Stop thinking you've got to give up growth. You've got to give up appreciation to get that kind of a dividend, because you don't. You see, you just have to be smarter. Where Wall Street has prepackaged everything, and it's very simple, check mark a box on a form, check mark a box on a website, and you get to invest in a mutual fund, okay? That's simple, that's easy. But guess what? When you really start taking control of how you invest, and you have someone like a fiduciary who is able to hand select individual positions for you, now you not only get the growth by investing in equities, but guess what else you get? You get 100% of the dividend that corporation is taking and declaring it to its shareholders. So you get that income. So let's go back to my analogy. You need 10% in order to be able to sustain the lifestyle that you want in retirement. Is it such a bad thing that you spend principal? Well, I think that here are the 3 or 4 things that we have to be mindful of. Number one, it is true that in theory, if you spend your principal during the go-go years, And then you hit the slow go years where you're not going as far, you're not going as long, you're not maybe spending as much on those vacations and those luxury items that you could potentially recover. But that's a big if. That's taking into consideration that you're going to have a good return on the investments that you're investing in, that the market is conducive to growth, that the economy is growing and expanding, and there's optimism in the air and things are going to be going up. So we have to think about, okay, well, what else happens in our 70s? Well, what else happens in our 70s is a little thing called a required minimum distribution. And guess what? The challenge behind that RMD is that it starts out innocent enough, no question about it. But every year that you get older, every year that you age, that RMD is going to only go in one direction. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you have been spending your principal to maintain your lifestyle, let me ask this question. Have you ever known a lifestyle to get less expensive? When I ask you, what do you think inflation is going to do in the future? Can you really honestly look me in the eye and tell me that you think inflation is going to go down and it's going to stay down? And the answer is no. Most every single American knows that every corporation that produces things is going to charge what the market will bear. And we know that from time to time, inflation takes a grip on the economy and things are costing more. And so this required minimum distribution is really adding insult upon injury, where you would think you're spending less. You aren't ever given that opportunity to spend less. Why? Because the government is saying, regardless of what you want to take out, we are forcing you to take distributions. And you see, that is a real problem. That's a problem because if you don't have the interest in the dividends to be able to sustain your lifestyle and the income that you want in the go-go years, chances are you may not learn your lesson. You may not have the interest in the dividends to cover the required minimum distribution later on in life. The second thing that we have to think about is potential volatility. And Sam, I already know that you are no stranger to volatility. You've sent me questions before. You've expressed to me what you've seen in times of contraction like 2020 and 2022. And this is the reality for every investor here in America. We know that we would hope, we would expect that the market is always going to go up. And you know what? We know that the market is going to go up. But we also know that there's going to be times of great volatility. And guess what? There's never a good time for volatility, right? Not unless you're a buyer. If you're a buyer, then volatility is awesome. In fact, we can't wait for volatility to show up because it allows us that are, deal buyers to go out and buy things at a discount, right? That's so vital to us being able to, add to our war chest and be able to buy things while they're on sale. But when you're in the distribution stage of your life, if you've spent too much of your principal up front, now you don't feel good. You feel even worse when there's volatility. And so it's a big risk. You're playing chicken with the stock market. And now here's the third one. And the third one is the least savory of everything that we could discuss. Is it so bad to spend my principal in the go-go years? Well, what's the number one risk that you have as you age and you get older as it pertains to your health? And the answer is very simply put, convalescent care. Home health care, independent living, convalescent skilled care. And those things are not cheap, right? It is unbelievable to me the amount of money that nursing homes are able to receive from a single patient. And with that being said, that can just absolutely decimate a person. It can run them out of cash. And before you know it, now they're signing up for Medicaid. And so that risk is always there unless we've covered that risk. We have long-term care insurance, which so many people are still hesitant to purchase because it in and of itself is very expensive. So, Sam, the question that you asked, is it so bad to spend principal in my go-go years? The simple answer is yes, it is bad. It's very bad. And it doesn't mean you can't do it, and it doesn't mean that you can't get lucky. The question is, do you feel lucky? Do you feel lucky, punk? because this is one of the primary reasons that we want to have our portfolio producing the 4, the 5, the 6, even the 7% in interest and dividends. So if we do choose to have a more luxurious lifestyle, we do decide to splurge and maybe spend a little bit more, we know that that interest and that dividend, that 4%, that 5%, that 6%, is helping to make and stretch our principal. It's helping it to last longer. So realize, number one, there is more than just 2 stages, more than just the accumulation stage, more than just the distribution stage. There's the transition stage where you're learning, you're acquiring new knowledge, you're getting prepared for retirement, and then you get into retirement and you look forward to those 3 stages. It's the passage that we all go through. We just have to make certain that our portfolio is prepared for it. Not only so you can have the lifestyle that you want, but so that you can also rest easy and you can have the peace of mind to know that you'll never run out of money before you run out of life. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.